You've arrived on rather a special night. This episode of Diabolical contains spoilers for the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
This is Diabolical, the comedy podcast where four long-suffering friends dissect films' most dastardly schemes, then try to improve them. I'm your host, Gareth, and this week's movie is 1975's The Rocky Horror Picture Show. So, Peril Pals, put on your finest fishnets and corsets, and for the four in attendance and the hundreds listening at home, let's get diabolical!
I love the way you close your eyes for a second there. Was that just for effect, or were you actually in the zone?
It felt appropriate. Hello, and welcome to this week's pod. Joining me, as always, are the panel of peril, who will compete at the show's close to see who can improve the villainous plan of the week the best, and earn the right to pick next week's film and become host. I'm joined this week, as always, by Ben, Craig, and Adam. As you're lumbered with me as your host for today, you're going to have to endure the return of the Mr. and Mrs. game, which I call the Mr. and Mrs. game. This time round, we're going to try and figure out one another's favourite film musical number. So, what I haven't done is written mine down. Did anybody else write theirs down? I forgot.
I've written mine down.
This game just can't go right, can it? It's either... It's just not happening.
Do you want me to get a pen and paper quickly?
Yeah.
Hang on. First up in the game, we're all going to try and guess Craig's favourite movie musical number.
I think I've got this. I think Craig's favourite movie musical number is Everybody Wants to Be a Cat from the Aristocrats.
Ah.
Okay.
I think his favourite is Little Shop of Horrors, You'll Be a Dentist.
Oh, that's a good one. My guess for Craig's favourite musical number is Jailhouse Rock from the film Jailhouse Rock.
Ooh. And I'll tell you, they have all been my favourite movie musical number at some point in my history. However, my current favourite movie musical number is America from West Side Story.
Oh. From the Steven Spielberg version.
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's good.
I wanna be in America.
In America.
Cheese is always free in America. Isn't that from that mouse cartoon?
Fievel Goes West.
It's not. That's the second one, though. The first one, American Tail, I think it's called. An American Tail.
Yeah.
But they sing the mouse version with cheese in it. Cheese is free in America.
If you haven't seen Spielberg's West Side Story, I highly recommend it. It's great.
It is.
Cheese isn't free anywhere, by the way, listeners. You got to pay for it.
Yeah.
By hook or by crook.
A little public service announcement there, Turner.
Thank you. It's all right. I didn't want people to be walking in supermarkets and then to blame us.
You're not going to get us on that.
Next up, we will try and guess Ben's favourite movie musical number.
Well, I'm going to go for Cannibal the Musical, The Sky is Blue.
Oh, interesting.
Very good.
My initial thought was that Ben's favourite movie musical number would be something from the David Bowie movie Labyrinth. I didn't bother looking into what songs they were because I changed my mind when I realised that Ben's favourite movie musical number must be Pinball Wizard from Tommy.
It's a good call.
I went for the first one that leapt to my mind when I was trying to think of Ben's favourite movie musical number. So I've gone for Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was the one I had in mind, and I love all of those songs. But there's one song that I sing quite frequently around the house from the musical Bugsy Malone.
Oh, of course.
You Give a Little Love.
How did I forget about your obsession with Bugsy Malone?
You give a little love and it all comes back to you.
There you go.
I thought you'd be like, we could have been anything that we wanted to be.
That's You Give a Little Love.
Does it?
Yeah.
Aha!
I've never seen Bugsy Malone. Okay. 3 is the magic number, as we're going to try and guess Adam's favourite movie musical number.
Okay, I'm less confident about mine now. So my first thought of what Turner would like, see I've written here and crossed out, stop the Planet of the Apes, I want to get off.
Yeah,
I
it's
disqualified because it's only in The Simpsons, not a movie,
good.
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
then I went for Hakuna Matata from The Lion King.
Ooh.
But then I decided, no, it is the Trapper song from Cannibal the Musical.
Ah, similar ideas there then.
Yahoo!
Yo! Cut their skin off, cut their eyes out with my knife.
They should have sung that in Prey, shouldn't they, during that sequence?
So I was really torn with Turner. I know he has a very deep love for two things, the Beatles and Lord of the Rings. So that's where my mind went. I was thinking something for Hard Day's Night, and I was thinking something a little bit out of left field on that, not one of the really well-known ones. So I was thinking The Things We Said Today. And then I thought, no, it's got to be Lord of the Rings. So I went with Misty Mountain Cold from The Hobbit.
Very good.
Not musical though, is it?
It's a musical number from a movie.
It's a musical number. Yeah,
It's a spontaneous sing-along, isn't it? But it is, you're right, it's a musical number.
yeah, I think that's a fair enough inclusion.
And I reckon he's definitely rubbed one out to it at least twice.
Yes.
You can't prove that.
If I'd known we could do numbers that weren't from musicals, I would have gone with that other Lord of the Rings song that Billy Boyd sings. You know, home is behind.
Oh, it's pain. Sniffs and he eats a cherry tomato and goes
That's the one, yeah.
everywhere. Yeah.
The song on this week's episode of Rings of Power is really good as well. Over the Harfoots
Yeah.
travelling. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's
Good
great.
little number. I've sort of gone a bit similar to Ben. I haven't gone for a musical film. I've just gone for a musical number that's in a film. So I've gone for Jabba's Palace musical number from Return of the Jedi.
Cool, neat, dead.
The weird Twi'lek.
Well, I'm afraid to say you're all quite way off the mark. It's a more traditional Disney film, and it is from Aladdin. You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me.
Ah.
Robin Williams' performance synced with the animation is just
Yeah.
gets you every time. It was between that and Little Shop of Horrors.
I thought you were going to say it was between that and the Will Smith version, and I was going to just leave.
No, I've not even seen that one yet.
Nah, me neither.
It's not bad.
You ain't never had a slap from me.
And finally, we're going to try and guess my favourite movie musical number.
I thought for Gaz it would be something from Little Shop of Horrors or from Sweeney Todd, and I couldn't decide. So I went with Feed Me from Little Shop of Horrors.
Ah.
Well, first, my mind went to Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, but stopped there. Didn't want to think of any numbers from it. So I went for You're Welcome from Moana.
Okay. As we all know, Gaz is like an armadillo. He's hard on the outside, but soft on the inside. So with that in mind, I chose Beauty and the Beast from the movie of the same name.
Tale as old as time.
Sung by Angela Lansbury.
Yes.
There's no way Gaz likes anything by Lansbury.
There's no way he can resist.
I do genuinely love all three of those songs. Little Shop Horrors is one of mine, Izzy's favourite films to watch together. You're Welcome from Moana. It's brilliant. I listen to that from time to time just on Spotify.
Same.
And Beauty and the Beast too, that's one of my favourite Disney films. But actually, my favourite movie song is The Time Warp from this week's film,
yeah.
Rocky Horror
Is
Picture
it?
Show. For reasons that I'll go into when we discuss the film, I have quite a few reasons. Some of you may have seen in my Letterboxd review.
Well, I get it. I mean, it's just
No, I didn't watch it actually. I didn't look at it.
it's just it's just a jump to the left
And a step to the right. In news from 1975, on New Year's Day, Mitchell, Haldeman and Ehrlichman are found guilty of the Watergate cover-up. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is released in the UK. The Vietnam War ends with the fall of Saigon. The UK votes yes in a referendum to remain a member of the European Community. Rembrandt's painting The Night Watch is slashed several times at a museum in Amsterdam. Muhammad Ali defeats Joe Frazier in the thriller In Manila. and heavy metal band Iron Maiden are formed by Steve Harris. On with the film. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is director Jim Sharman's adaptation of Richard O'Brien's original stage show, and tells the tale of sexual awakening of Brad and Janet, played by Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon, two all-American teens who happen upon a scary, isolated castle when their car breaks down on them one ill-fated night. Little do they know that the castle is run by one Dr. Frank N Furter, a scientist of ill repute from planet Transylvania in the transsexual galaxy. Taking in B-movie, horror and science fiction tropes, copious amounts of flesh on display, and banger after banger of musical numbers, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is one of a kind in popular culture. Sharman and O'Brien did reunite for a quasi-sequel called Shock Treatment, in which Brad and Janet return in a new scenario and played by different actors, but it is not well regarded and I have not seen it.
I have.
Have you? What do you think?
It's completely different. It's not as good.
Hmm.
And I was like, what, 8 or 9 when I saw it? So not for me either.
I don't think I could even bring myself to watch the trailer. It came up on my YouTube because I was looking for various other things and I was just like, I just don't want to see it.
Yeah. Although one good thing, Barry Humphries is in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Love Barry Humphries.
yeah.
Well, I've got a few short facts about the film. It was shot at Bray Studios, where Hammer Horror used to film and reused a lot of their sets and props. The initial reaction to the film was very negative until the Waverley Theatre in New York began hosting midnight screenings with the audience cosplaying along. It holds the record for longest running theatrical release at 47 years and is still on limited release in cinemas to this day. Other notable versions of the Time Warp include Damien, which reached number 1 in the UK in 1989 and has not aged very well. A version on Ryan Murphy's Glee in 2010, which is good. And Tenacious D's Rock the Vote Blue Democrat Lips version from 2020, which is brilliant. Anyway, what did everybody think of this week's film?
For me, it's one that I grew up on. I used to put it on VHS about once a week. So it's always been part of my cinematic landscape, and it's still great fun. Personally, I don't think all of the musical numbers in it are that memorable, but it's enjoyable, and I understand why it's formed what you would have to call like a cult community around it.
So this was the first time I'd ever seen it. I'd seen songs in YouTube and in clips on TV over the years, but yeah, this is the first time I've actually seen it as a coherent story, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you've noticed over the course of the podcast, the films I've enjoyed the most are the ones that have been kind of the furthest away from heavy topics and kind of the deeper, darker stories. And so this one I thought was great. Really good entertainment. The musical numbers were great. I agree with Craig. Not all of them memorable. I'm just trying to remember if I could picture them all, but I can't. But yeah, it was fun. And there were some great numbers. I loved the nods to like the B movies, as the King Kong nod where they're climbing the radio tower in the theatre. And Tim Curry is just...
Tim Curry is off the charts. He's amazing.
Unbelievable. I can see that he's really enjoying himself as well, and I think that makes a difference. I say about the musical numbers, though, what I would say is that obviously Time Warp was everywhere. Like, you would know Time Warp if you had no idea what the movie was. But the number that actually always stuck with me was Hop Tootie, the Meatloaf bit.
That's a great cameo.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've seen the movie as well. It's just one of those ones I've never got around to and always like seen plenty of. And I remember it being in the theatres around here and seeing the people going to the things. So I never really knew about it apart from the Time Warp, which obviously we probably all remember from school discos. And I enjoyed it, but I think a lot of its power has diminished quite a bit. But I recognise probably what it means to a lot of people, particularly in the LGBTQ plus community. And I can imagine it was like a shining beacon to a lot of them, and it must still hold a lot of power. It's probably broken down a lot of walls and maybe encourage people to talk about how they feel inside and how they want to express themselves. So yeah, for that reason, it's a fantastic movie. And I did enjoy the performances, although like Craig says, there's not a lot of memorable songs in there, but it's the performances that really capture you.
Well, for my part, similar story to Craig's. It was my sister who introduced me to the film, endless rewatches, and I hadn't seen it in about 20 years. And it just instantly came flooding back to me as soon as those lips appeared on the screen, singing the opening tune Science Fiction double feature.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's just because I knew it so well from when I was young, but every single song is just so good. Damn It, Janet is a cracker.
Yeah, that's great, actually.
With the American Gothic couple singing in the background squeakily.
Yeah.
Obviously, Time Warp is incredible. Sword of Damocles hanging over my head. That's a great one. Meatloaf's song, Touch Me, which is Janet's big number. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Dr. Von Scott's song about Eddie. When Eddie said he didn't like his Teddy, you knew he wasn't a good kid. That one. I love that one. It's just start to finish. I was loving it. I was surprised. I said in my Letterboxd review, as soon as the Time Warp came on, I could feel myself welling up. It was a real shock to me. It was like, Jesus Christ. I didn't realise how much this film meant to me. Clearly it means a lot. I downloaded the full soundtrack as soon as it finished, and I've listened to it twice since. I downloaded Bat Out of Hell, Meatloaf, because his number's a cracker. I went straight online to look for touring productions of Rocky Horror Picture Show, and there's one in Manchester in February, which I think I'm probably going to go to.
Wow.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, when I say not all, I don't mean Time Warp is and none of the others are, because clearly some of the others are, especially the Susan Sarandon one. That's one of my favourite ones as well.
Just going back to Meatloaf, that's like the first point in the film where you really get a sense that Frank's a bad guy as well, isn't it? Because he's just slowly stalking Meatloaf with is it an axe?
A pickaxe, yeah.
And I remember that always really disturbed me when we watched it as kids. Genuinely like freaked me out because he's such a garrulous chap up until that point, and then it's just a really quick turn.
There's a turn, and then he gives that line. He says, "Oh, don't be upset. It was a mercy killing." Which is just was one of my favourites.
People always say they'd love to see Tim Curry as Batman's Joker, and they just need to watch this. So they've got it.
One thing I struggled with was just in my mind trying to reconcile these two different people. One is this Richard O'Brien who co-created this kind of genius musical. And then the other one's one that kind of sings to a skeleton going, "Mumsy," in the Crystal Maze. It's like these two people couldn't have been further apart in my mind. It's really hard to reconcile.
Did you notice on the exterior shot of the castle, the crystal dome was on top?
Yeah.
I did.
I didn't catch that.
Is that where it came from?
It must have been, I guess.
Crystal Maze can be fun, and it has its castle sections, the medieval zone.
Yeah, but it's so far removed from the Rocky Horror Picture Show in my mind.
The question I had about Richard O'Brien, and I don't know if fans of the movie speculate upon this a lot, but you spoke about the Damn It, Janet number with the American Gothic couple in the background. That clearly is Richard O'Brien. So is this like a Wizard of Oz situation where the events of the castle are a dream and the real Richard O'Brien isn't Riff Raff, it's the American Gothic looking guy at the church?
Well, I wondered, because the priest is also Tim Curry, right?
Yeah.
And in the investigator's office, he has those pictures circled.
It's a plausible reading of it, isn't it?
Either that or maybe the Transylvanian characters have their eyes on Brad and Janet before they ever get anywhere near the castle.
And that's why the motorcycles were kind of circling.
Two observations I had. I thought Tim Curry's Frank N Furter looked sort of facially anyway, it's very similar to Freddie Mercury at the time. Recently watched one of their, I think it must have been a 1975 or 76 show from somewhere like one of the football grounds in South London, and I was like, that's facially wise, it's Freddie Mercury. So I thought, well, I wonder if he's taken some of that, or if
other way around. It
was a glam rock type of era, wasn't it? So I thought there's a lot of that anyway, wasn't it? So
Fred and Tim Curry were friends, but Fred,
there you go,
he's taken inspiration from Frank N Furter, not the other way around.
Right. There you go. I thought it's too much like a coincidence not to be related, so there you go, that was that.
As you say, he was already dressing glam rock wise, but he definitely took some style and swagger from his friendship with Tim Curry, for sure.
That's what a lot of the artists, whether it be actors or musicians, though, they do influence and take influence from the world around them, don't they? So it's all kind of linked in that way, I suppose, isn't it?
But you're right about the glam rock connection. Because they even say in the film rock and roll's dead.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
During my research and stuff, I was looking at 1975 and what was going on around it. And I was just like, oh, it's glam rock. And that was that whole movement, I guess, in a way that everybody started to express themselves differently. And then this movie came out and that probably pushed things a bit further along.
Yeah, Eddie and the Bikers represent that old school of rock and roll from the James Dean era of things.
That's right, yeah. And then Rocky kind of symbolises glam rock, doesn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
All looks and not as much content.
Yeah.
The songs for me mostly are sort of old rock and roll style. There's a lot of piano and sort of doo-wop.
Honky tonk.
Yeah.
Did anybody notice what Meatloaf had tattooed on his knuckles?
I've got it written down. Second film in a row.
Yep.
Nice link.
Yep. There we go. Seg.
Unfortunately, Cookie Lopez wasn't involved in this one.
Cookie Lopez didn't do any wardrobe this time.
That's a shame.
The Night of the Hunter was fresh in my mind, particularly Gaz's reaction to it. And there I was watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show thinking, so Gaz doesn't like melodramatic acting. Interesting.
Well, it's stagey camp acting for me is different to
Oh, that's how
melodrama.
you're getting around it, is it? Well, I knew
It
was
is.
some sort of excuse.
You couldn't.
It's on purpose in Rocky Horror Picture Show, isn't
It's
it?
on purpose in Night of the Hunter as well. That's what I was saying.
I don't think it is.
You couldn't drop Robert Mitchum from that film into Rocky Horror Picture Show and say those two acting styles are the same for my money.
Well, we'll never know.
Well, that's true. It's a scientific impossibility.
But before that, my very first impression of this, and if you want a film to delight me from the outset, fuck with the studio opening titles. The arrangement of the 20th Century Fox fanfare.
Amazing.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so great. I loved it.
Yeah, brilliant. That must have been one of the first films to do something like that, surely.
Yeah, I don't know. We should look at the history of it. I've seen a video about the history of people messing with the Universal logo because, there's so many great ones. Scott Pilgrim and others might look into that because I love that stuff.
That was great. Yeah, and you knew you were in for a good time as soon as you heard that. I thought, yeah, this is going to be good.
The teeth in the opening segment look very good for a 1970s teeth.
American, though, aren't they?
But I was going to say, I've not just said that without some sort of link to some evidence base, but if you watch music video from the same time, say ABBA's Money, 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 where they go quite close on the teeth, their teeth aren't perfect, but the one in the Rocky Horror Picture Show opening credits are.
Where do you think this ranks in the list of Tim Curry's best performances? Because you got Frank N Furter, you got Pennywise, you've got Darkness, and you've got the Home Alone concierge.
Yeah, it's Darkness's character from the Tom Cruise
From Legend.
movie, and the very well-loved Cluedo movie. Don't forget.
I didn't know he was in that. Was he Colonel Mustard? That would be my guess.
He was the lead piping.
I think he's just like the butler of the house where everything happens.
Yeah, okay.
I've never seen it, but I know that people love it. So we should probably watch that at some point. I mean, for me, right at the top, it's not only, like I said earlier, like a pitch perfect performance full of such confidence, but also because you can see that he's clearly relishing embodying that character. That's infectious.
Content-wise, he's got so much more in this than the other two movies. So really, it's no comparison, I don't think, really. He's got so much more freedom to do what he wants, whereas he does a hell of a lot with a lot less in It and Home Alone 2. So, yeah, I'd say this.
It's a very physical performance as well. And I don't know how they did it, but was anybody else utterly convinced that he was Brad and Janet in silhouette until he revealed that he wasn't?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, that. Running back the exact same sequence.
Yeah.
I'm afraid so, Brad. Convinced she's Janet. That is so good.
I had one of my favourite lines. Janet says, what have you done with Brad? And he says, oh, well, nothing. Do you think I should?
Yeah.
And then he does the same, obviously, with Brad for Janet.
If we're doing favourite lines, one of my first ones is, what charming underclothes you both have.
Yeah, I've got that.
And the way he says, tingling with anticipation.
Oh, bollocks. You got mine. That's my only favourite one.
But okay, sorry, I should stop doing like three. But my very favourite line is when somebody is critical of Rocky's creation. He says, I didn't make him for you.
Seeing as Craig's ambushed me again and taking my favourite line, I'm just going to say phallic levers.
Yeah, they were very much.
Giving him a good yank.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I liked it when Janet and Brad were driving in the car, and I think a bike rushes past, and Janet goes, "They sure do take their lives in their hands, especially in this weather." And Brad goes, "Yes, Janet, life's pretty cheap to that type."
Yeah. That's like a perfect 50s B movie exchange.
It's great. Yeah.
I never used to like Barry Bostwick in my younger days watching the film, but now he's right up there with Tim Curry.
Oh
for me.
yeah, he's
such
perfectly cast in this.
A brilliant square. He's amazing.
Do you remember that he was the mayor or mayor, if you prefer, in Spin City?
Mayor if you're British, mayor if you think you want to be American.
All right, you fucking flag nons.
So it's rootin' tootin' Texas Craig, everybody. Here he comes.
Oh, Texas, the only place in America.
Speaking of mayors or mayors, did anyone else think that Rocky looked like a young, incredibly buff Boris Johnson?
Yes, yes. Oh God! When he first popped out, and I went, if he comes out all tubby and talking bullshit, and then I was going to be really upset.
Calling people old boy and old chap. You're gonna have to cut that out so I forget the comment.
Another cool bit of casting that people might pick up on: the narrator Charles Gray played Blofeld in a couple of Bond movies.
Yep,
he's very good as well as the criminologist.
Yes.
Just very straight-laced, stiff upper lip, glaring at the camera constantly.
But also juxtaposed with him cutting in to give instructions during the Time War.
Yeah.
That was great, yeah.
There was a good stage version in the 90s where Nicholas Parsons played the criminologist.
Oh, yeah.
And
oh, my God.
He did it with the suit on the top.
With fishnets.
Yeah, and the fishnets on the bottom half.
Oh, my God, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice another stalwart of 80s British TV?
Yeah, Christopher Biggins. In the lineup, in the dance, yeah. Straight away, I was like, I recognise that. Who's that? And then, straight on IMDb, it was like, of course, it's Biggins. So I've got a couple of lines at the start when Brad and Janet are outside of the chapel after the wedding, and they're talking about the happy couple's chances of a long and happy marriage. And Brad just says, "Well, everyone knows that Betty's a wonderful little cook." When Riff Raff answers the door to Brad and Janet, and he just looks at Janet and he says, "You're wet." And Janet just goes, "Yes, it's raining." After the Sword of Damocles song, Janet just says, "Oh no, I don't like men with too many muscles," and looks up at Brad smiling. Oh, and when Dr. Scott comes into it for the first time, and Frank says to him, "Dr. Scott, or should I say, Dr. Von Scott?" So it's a big reveal.
I think it's in the I'm Going Home song. They say, "Tell us about it, Janet." And I wondered if that was a Grease reference. "Tell me about it, stud." Intoned in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think Grease, as a musical on stage, predates the musical stage version of Rocky Horror.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, it could have just been common parlance in the 70s.
Well,
it's not the exact same line. It's just that it's intoned the same. That's the thing that I thought it was. "Tell us about it, Janet."
If I had to review this movie in 2 words, it would just be sexy grease.
Oh, that sounds bad. I'm going to the shop to get myself some sexy grease.
Oh!
Keep yourself warm, love. I'll fetch the sexy grease.
Just one last dialogue exchange that I really like is just when they're all just saying each other's names back and forth. Brad, Rocky, Janet. Just over and over again in circles. What was everybody's favourite song in the film then?
Mine is Touch Me.
Yeah, I'm surprised rewatching it how little season Sarandon has in the film, but what she does have is
cracking body.
fantastic.
She's got a great voice and she nails the bits she does, and she makes Janet a memorable character, which on paper it might not have been. Speaking of people with surprisingly incredible singing voices, Tim Curry has got fucking range.
Yeah.
He could have been a pop star, obviously the stage presence as well. You know, I was saying about his performance being really physical. One thing I noticed is in the can-can lineup at the end, his can-can kicks are like great, and Rocky's are really lackluster. Like he's barely doing it.
When you pack on that much mass, you lose flexibility. That's just a straight up fact.
Right.
Speaking from experience, yeah.
Well, look at me, man. Look at me. My favourite song it's a toss-up between science fiction double feature, the opening song, and Eddie. I really like that one too.
Both crackers.
For me, it's got to be Time Warp, but yeah, I love the Eddie song as well. But Time Warp is always going to be linked to school discos and things like that.
Yeah.
One thing I would say about Time Warp, unless I've completely misunderstood it, is I think it's the one song in the Rocky Horror Show that doesn't advance the plot in any way that I understood.
It's a filler.
Like they're not explaining anything.
It's a filler. It was originally conceived as filler because the original stage show was 40 minutes. So they just did that song and threw it in there as filler.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And of course it took on a life of its own, and then that's it.
It's interesting how those things happen, isn't it? A bit of throwaway filler becomes one of the most iconic songs in history, not just
that's it.
from that film.
Yeah.
Top draw trivia, Turner.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about this in our messages during the week. What do we think is happening in that creation of Rocky sequence? What's that liquid? What's that receptacle that his bandaged body is in?
It's obviously aided in technology.
Yeah. Who knows?
I think it's best not to think about the science. Don't dwell on it too much. I feel like what the metaphor of it is that he's being willed into life by like sexual energy and liberation, and not by anything scientific. And I think I'm right in saying there's a rainbow on that tank that he's in, right?
Yeah, coloured perspex, isn't it? Yeah.
But there's also electricity.
Yeah.
The obvious nods to
Frankenstein.
Yeah, Frankenstein, but specifically James Whale.
It's alive.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to bellow that out once Rocky alighted the tub, but alas, no.
And it's not just a love letter to B-movie horror and Hammer. With the narrator, you've got a touch of Alfred Hitchcock Presents Twilight Zone.
Well, I would like to just quickly throw in my favourite names from the credits in this section that I call my favourite name from the credits. I saw the principal musician, Rabbit. That's a good name. Thought that could even be the best name of the week. But then, almost out of nowhere, appeared the construction manager, one Mr. Dick Frift. Dick Frift, everybody.
That sounds appropriate.
Thrifty with the old penis, eh?
He doesn't use it willy-nilly.
Oh!
This is the part of the show where the panel of peril compete for the title of this week's Most Diabolical, and with that comes the honour of choosing next week's movie and hosting the show. In the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Dr. Frank N Furter is attempting to create the perfect sexual partner to do with what he will, and possibly murder once he's finished with him. Fellas, let's do the mind walk again. Why have I written that?
Is that the best you could come up with?
Were you up at like 2 a.m? Glowing orbs.
The episode Seinfeld wakes up in the night, writes it down, but can't work out what his joke is.
Yeah.
Oh well.
That's got to stay in.
Might as well leave that in.
Yeah, definitely. That is hilarious.
I'm just going to say 3 florets of broccoli.
3.
At first I was going to give it 1 because I thought it was absolute nonsense, but then I thought actually it's quite diabolical just building a sex toy, a living sex toy. So I upgraded it to 3 florets of broccoli there. So there you go.
Yeah.
We can get on.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so first up, we will have Adam.
Oh, fucking hell. Oh, was I not on mute then? Oh, sorry.
You'll get yours, Steinson. You'll get yours.
I'll get you, my pretty. And your little dog, too.
Frank N Furter needs a better equipped man / woman / human. Frank seems to like a bit of everything. Pansexual, I believe the term is. How will he combine all his favourite things into a single human body? We all know boys are made of frogs and snails and puppy dog tails, and girls are made from sugar and spice and all things nice.
What?
With this knowledge at the front of his mind, Frank sets about his plan. First of all, Frank decides he will adopt as many puppies as he can from the local animal sanctuary. With a huge mansion with large grounds, he makes a perfect doggy daddy. Aww. Frank then makes sure the ponds in his grounds are well stocked with frogs and lots of vegetables are left out for hungry snails to congregate on. Yes, Frank thinks, this is all going to plan. Next, Frank heads down to his local town centre to the nearest bakery. Give me your finest buns, dear. Actually, I'll take all your sweetest products post haste. With the delivery arranged to his abode, Frank heads outside to fulfill his next segment, sending out Riff Raff in his place. The town is full of zombies. No, not the undead. The zombies that plague all town centres in the world. Have you guessed yet? I'm talking about spice zombies, the overindulgent aficionados of the novel psychoactive substance. Riff Raff follows the trail of stumbling, half-asleep nitwits to the source of their supply. I'll take everything you have, my friend, he says, clearing out the human parasite of his stock of spice. Meanwhile, Magenta is busy on the phone, ordering all things nice from the very catalogue. Frank has also been busy in his lab making a few new contraptions. With everything assembled, he unveils his next part of the plan. He has been busy creating a huge 2-story high food blender. Into this blender, full of puppies, frogs, snails, sweet bakery products, spice, and everything nice. It all's blended down into a nice thick paste, and then put into a human-sized mould of what Frank considers to be the perfect human, with both sets of bits. Into his freezer goes the mould, and 7 days later, hey presto, the mould is split, and his perfect human is born. I'm going to call this perfect human Eiffel Powers, and the person is a cross between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bridget Bardot, but with a cock, balls, and fanny.
Eiffel Powers.
Eiffel Powers, yeah. Do you see what I did there?
Like Tower?
Mm-hmm.
Tower?
I just sort of camped it up a bit.
As is your wont.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's any less, nonsensical than the plot of the movie.
Yeah, that's it.
But the movie was made in 1975, and I think it was set in like the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have the drug Spice and the very catalogue there?
Probably.
I'm not sure they did.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking I was called a shenanigan on this.
But anything's possible. The plot is so out there and totally hard to follow that I just thought, well, I'm just going to have fun with it. There you go.
Time machine. They could do the time warp, couldn't they, I suppose?
Time warp, and it took him...
My follow-up question is, what are the nice things in the very catalogue?
Well, it's whatever, it's... I guess it'll be...
Microwave?
Yeah, well, it could be like...
Potpourri.
What's the name? The Easy Bake Oven, I suppose, that kids can have. A little glass of... A little bit of Chanel No. 5. Some nice makeup.
Scented candles.
Scented candles, yeah, there you go. It's all that, yeah.
What aroma?
Vanilla and...
No, you're wrong.
PS5?
No, not PS5.
Not in 1975, Craig, you fucking tool.
Oh, in 1975 when they didn't have the very catalogue.
Oh, they time warped, didn't they?
Can't time warp a PS5.
Oh, yeah, they can. I forgot.
Can't get hold of one for love nor money.
Yeah.
Time warp on there.
It's mad.
They're available now. PS5 is available now.
They've time warped so far in the future that the pads actually work now.
Yeah.
So-
Hey!
The question I was going to ask, Tim.
Yeah.
All this stuff just mushed up together and
Yeah.
put into a mold.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just be like a gross-looking grey-skinned bit of jelly rather than
No.
a sexually desirable human.
A big jelly baby.
Yeah.
Once it's in Frankenfurter's magic freezer, it makes just as much sense as that mummy in a sort of rainbow-coloured tank. Creative license, as they call it.
What's going to be powering it? Because we know that Eddie's brain was put into Rocky, or part of Eddie's brain.
Love.
Power of love. Okay.
The power of love. It's a curious thing.
Fair enough.
Okay, next we're going to go for Ben, please.
All right. Well, this week's plot got me a thinking. What is the perfect person? Am I a perfect person? Is there even such a thing? See, the world doesn't march to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you might not be right for some. And by that I mean we all like our own weird shit. So I posit that rather than the perfect person, Dr. Frankenfurter, with his crazy alien ways, actually wanted to create the most desirable person. So who are the most desirable people on the planet? Celebrities, obviously. And are all of them conventionally good looking? No. Just look at Jason Schwartzman. He's a petite hobgoblin of a man. But you wouldn't kick him out of bed, would you? Again, no. You wouldn't. You'd snuggle up tightly to him, arms wrapped around his hirsute torso, and you'd demand he recites lines from Rushmore. We all would. So it's fair to say that desirability and good looks are not necessarily connected. Although, as someone who has benefited greatly from them, I concede that good looks are helpful. So this person that we're making doesn't even need to be good looking. I believe Dr. Frank would gain far more satisfaction from a never-ending production line of imperfect but highly desirable people. All he'd need to do is set up a production company, using his innate flair for showmanship and pageantry, to create movies that delight audiences around the world. As his movies become hits, the unknown actors he casts become stars, and therefore instantly and immeasurably desirable. But what if they spurn his advances? Impossible. As his reputation as a creative tour de force grows, his desirability likewise skyrockets, giving him the sexual collateral to make it with his pick of the world's most desirable people.
Okay. My immediate question then would be, how long does Riff Raff put up with this shit? Because he wasn't impressed with the very brief amount of time it took to enact the movie's plot, let alone the years it would take to build such a reputation in movie making.
I didn't consider Riff Raff. I thought he would be off hosting the Crystal Maze, so we'd have a bit of time.
Maybe he could be one of the movie stars.
Yeah, keep him busy. We've got a role. Your mother's a skeleton. We need you to sing to her.
Mum's here.
Has anybody watched The Crystal Maze with Richard Ayoade?
I think I've seen one episode, which is quite good. Yeah, I quite liked it.
Yeah, I wanted to like it more, but yeah, I didn't care.
I think once you've watched the original with Richard O'Brien, it does never quite reaches the same heights again, does it? So
Ed Tudor Pole was all right.
Yeah, it was nowhere near. I was going to say Ed Tudor Pole was awful.
Didn't go that far.
My mum used to go to school with Ed Tudor Pole.
Did she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was her opinion of him?
I can't remember. But I remember she said that she went to school with Ed Tudor Pole.
He was also in the Rocky Horror Show on stage, Ed Tudor Pole, for many years.
Yeah, that's probably why O'Brien recruited him.
So, good plan?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just... It's quite... I mean, I know all the plans are far-fetched, but it does seem quite far-fetched to become a big-time movie director creating desirable stars. I suppose that basically was the Hollywood movie system of the 40s, 50s, 60s. It just seems more far-fetched than making a human out of frogs and snails and puppy dog tails.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
But wait, this guy was just like knocking out songs in the middle of murder.
Mine's grounded in science.
This guy, he was just like coming down an elevator, song. Murder a guy, song. He was just knocking songs out, classic songs left, right, and centre. If you put his mind to it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, just in the scales in my head, Turner's is a bit more weighty for some reason. I have no idea why.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with that
I
totally.
can't quite verbalise what it is.
I think it's the fact that Turner started his with everybody knows boys are made of snails and puppy dogs' tails
Have you never heard that
and
before?
frogs.
Start with your plans with a hook. You got to grab them by the jaffers straight away.
So Gaz is thinking, right, well, if everyone's supposed to know this and I don't, or I act like I don't, people are going to think I'm an idiot. So
Have you
immediately,
never heard this before?
never,
It's like a really well-known phrase.
You never heard it before.
never heard that.
I thought that's what half the laughs would be about.
No, I was laughing because I've never heard that and it sounded ridiculous.
Right.
That's why I was
Wow.
cracking
You've
up.
never heard
Well-
that girls are made of sugar and spice and all things nice?
I heard that, yeah.
It's from the same rhyme.
Same nursery
Haven't heard the
rhyme.
whole rhyme.
Yeah. Well,
Been fed that rhyme piecemeal, obviously.
that's it, exactly. Yeah.
Living in a dream world.
Welcome to reality, punk.
I think my mum must have censored it. She didn't want me knowing about the boy stuff.
Okay, and we'll go for the final plan with Craig.
Knowledge, it is said, is knowing that Rocky Horror is not the monster. Wisdom is also knowing that Rocky Horror is not the monster. But if we accept that it is Rocky's imperfect creation which leads Riff Raff and Magenta to treason against Frank, then in order to understand why the hot dog's diabolical plans were derailed, we must identify what was wrong with Rocky and how he could be perfected. Like Prometheus sculpting the first hard bodies from soft clay, Frank seemingly makes no mistakes in shaping Rocky's physical form, if the Teutonic look is what you're into at least, and ignoring his comb-over. But we can all agree that Rocky is objectively an Adonis in peak condition. So it is, we must look to his mind as the kink in the armour. Rocky's mind meat was plucked from the loaf of biker Eddie, the two sharing the brain and each having only half a mind to fondle Frank. Within that mind is the memory of lost love, both for Columbia and for Frank, and of betrayal, spurned by the jealous doctor. Had this emotional conflict not existed in the mind of Rocky, Frank could have curried his favour to make him more loyal and less fickle, less inclined to run into the open legs of Janet. Simply put, Frank needs a brain for his creation that either has no baggage or a less complex bond with its creator. Brad and Janet's arrival at the castle could have proved to be the perfect opportunity. Instead of showing off his creation to them, he should have made them his creation, scooping out their pink parts and smashing them together inside Rocky's cavity to create the perfect androgynous entity. Just like this film itself, what a mindfuck. With his harem of half-brained 50s throwbacks complete, Frank and co would hop on their choppers and ride off into the sunrise, leaving the remaining Transylvanians free to return to their home planet. So in a nutshell, don't use Eddie's brain. Use half of Brad's and half of Janet's. Check out the big brain on Brad.
How are you dividing those brains? Left hemisphere, right hemisphere, or horizontal?
Yeah, no, left to right.
Okay.
Take the left brain out of Brad, the right brain out of Janet, smash them together in Rocky's hole in his head.
Would one side of the brain deal with like motor functions and stuff like that?
No, that's
and
been
then-
proven to be a complete claptrap scientifically. Not how your brain works.
I did know, but I've subsequently forgotten I did study this. But there's an amount of neuroplasticity which the hemispheres can be rewritten in case of brain damage and so forth. It's really interesting,
I agree.
but I can't remember
not.
it very well. So
I read about it, but it's in one ear out the other. You know what I mean?
I guess a lot of dimwits would probably find it very, very boring. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Something said, not good. They called me a dimwit.
some absolutely diabolical schemes there, as always, from the panel of peril.
Wait, questions.
What?
We're not questioning Craig's anymore.
Oh, I thought you'd finished. Sorry,
I thought
go
we
on.
just had them. Yeah.
So,
Go on then.
so I just want to just once and for all kind of wrap that up. you're basically going to do the same thing. Rocky's going to look the same. He's going to look like Boris Johnson on steroids. You're just going to change the brain.
Yeah.
Wouldn't, as both Janet and Brad want to leave, if you use half of their brain each, wouldn't they still want to leave?
I think that's a really reductive view of what's happening in the film. I mean, they're both physically and emotionally attracted to Frank as well. And what I'm suggesting is that at the end they all leave together, leave Riff Raff behind, and let him leave as he wants to. He wants to go back to Transylvania, so let him.
I see.
Driving off into the sunrise.
Yeah, not the sunset, the sunrise, because everything's ahead of them.
Okay, so they could have a spare Brad and Janet like hybrid wandering around somewhere.
Well, no, because Brad and Janet are still them, but with half their brains, the way Eddie was when he came back. So they're still around, and they're still into Frank as they were themselves. But then Rocky has half of each of their brains as well. So there's three people to be in his little harem.
So he's cleverer than them.
Is that how that works?
I thought Frank wanted only half of Eddie's brain because he wanted to make Rocky dumb.
I don't know if that was explicit, but
Yeah,
He wanted a bimbo, right? A himbo. A thembo.
anyway, what he's getting that's better from this hybrid is he's getting both the male and female minds within that one perfect body, and they don't have the baggage that Eddie has from their prior relationship together.
so that brain's in Rocky, but then Brad and Janet are also still alive.
Yeah. The way Eddie was still alive.
And they're now stupid because they've been
yeah.
lobotomized, so you can do what you want with them.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie doesn't become more stupid, does he? So why would we assume that? We've seen Eddie walking around and he's fine until Frank killed him.
Does he just carry him around like Brad and Janet in the back of a trailer? Just
No,
like-
they ride the choppers as well. Because, like I just said about 3 or 4 times, Eddie was still fine. So why wouldn't they be?
I think it's quite a sexy plan. I'm into it.
I want that too. Best of 3 worlds.
I imagine the two halves of the brain are 69 inside.
That sold it. That sold it to me. Wine and dine 'em inside a skull 69 'em.
Just like the film itself. What a mindfuck.
Well, some absolutely diabolical schemes there from the panel of peril. To summarise, we had Adam's plan, which involved sort of a puree of frogs, snails, puppy dogs' tails, spice zombies, and all things nice, which was then poured into a mould and frozen.
All things nice from the very catalogue.
Yes, from the very catalogue.
Specifically.
And as everybody knows, there is no more comprehensive book of nice things than the very catalogue.
This is true. I just wonder how well a frozen human would do above room temperature.
I think you've got evidence there, Gaz, based on the Terminator toy you used to have.
Yeah, the flesh.
Oh shit, that was so cool.
Yeah.
The skin that came off it. Wow. Yeah.
Then we had Ben's plan, which for some reason I find slightly less plausible, where Frank becomes a movie director, creating his own celebrities who are desirable, and then he himself becomes.
Do you know, out of all of the plans, this is the only one that could actually happen in real life.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, but it's that implausible. that it's like so far detached.
It's too plausible that it becomes completely implausible.
It's gone full circle.
And then we had Craig's plan, which involved taking half of Brad's brain, half of Janet's brain, putting them into Rocky's body, and therefore he would have the perfect human and a male and a female also as sort of a harem, which I'm going to say is my favourite plan of the week. So Craig is this week's winner.
Bravo.
Congratulations.
Yes, well done. Well done.
It's only because you had the word harem in there.
Would you like to tell us what film you have selected for next week's episode?
Well, watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show has put me in a rather freaky mood, and I've decided that I'd like to break Ben's cherry, as it were, and introduce him to his first ever Marvel movie. We're going to watch the excellent Black Panther.
I knew this was coming at some point.
Yeah.
And at least this is one of the ones that I've heard is quite highly regarded.
Oh yeah.
And it's not hyper connected into the others, so I should be able to at least muddle through it.
It's a perfect onboarding point because although, like with a lot of Marvel stuff, seeing the things that came before it in the series would enrich your viewing of it. You absolutely don't need to have seen anything before this. It has its own very definitive story that's self-contained, its own style.
There's one thing he needs to know. He's in Civil War first, Black Panther, and his father gets killed in a bombing. In like a UN.
Yeah, but they do recap that in Black Panther.
In a bombing.
A bombing.
Lemon party.
I might go back and watch that. Which one is it then? Right, I will go in as I did with Star Trek. I'll go in with an open mind, and I'll try to enjoy it.
And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you for listening, and if you like what you heard, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars on Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Subscribe on YouTube, and tell your friends in person and on social media. Word of mouth is the best tool that we have, so please shout it from the rooftops! You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DiabolicalPod. Next time, we'll be discussing Marvel's Black Panther. But until then, remember, everything will be alright in the end, and if it isn't alright, then it isn't the end. Put on your finest fishnets and corsets. Oh, fuck! Corset. This is Diabolical, the comedy podcast. Podcast, I said then, didn't I? Unbelievable.